Today, I'm going to explain to you how to find the perfect tenants for your rental property. I've been renting to tenants since back in 2005 when I bought my first rental property at the age of, 20 years old, something like that. Over the years, I've rented to thousands of people, literally thousands of people across hundreds of different houses. Some that I own, some that I manage, some that are rent to rent or serviced accommodation, etc., etc. And the biggest question that I get asked all the time is, how do you find the best tenants for your property? Now, to answer that question, I've got to pre-frame it a little bit, because one of the things that most people do is, rather than starting here with the foundations, they actually start about here, which is to trying to get tenants to get into your property straight away. So I'm actually going to take you back a few steps to show you what you need to do first to lay the foundations in order to get the best tenants. Because remember, it's about getting the best tenants of the bunch, not just getting any tenant and making sure you're 100% occupied at all times. I would rather be 95% occupied with perfect tenants than be 100% occupied with terrible tenants who are going to drain my time, damage the property, not pay the rent, and give me lots of problems. So the foundation level then, with anything you're doing when it comes down to property, in this case is going to be to make sure that you've got the best property, it's in a good location, so those things are the first two things. But then more importantly is that your property is clean inside. Right? So your property has got to be clean inside, and it's got to be decorated nicely. So I notice a lot of times when landlords bring properties to me, they'll say to me, I haven't been able to rent this property, we've had lots of problems, loads of time wasters. Okay, that's usually the thing people say, had lots of time wasters. But actually, most of these tenants aren't time wasters. It's really a case that they're genuine people, they've come to look at the property, they're interested in renting, but then when they get there, the property is in a dirty condition, it hasn't been painted in 5 years, it hasn't been deep cleaned. So these are some of the things that you need to do if you want to make sure you get good tenants. Because standards are changing. People do expect a much higher standard now when they come to rent your property. So one of the first things I always do whenever there's a change of tenancy in any of my own properties that I own, is that I'll make sure that my cleaners come in and they do a deep clean on the property. That's the number one thing that I do every time. Make sure there's a deep clean done on the property so it's all clean and it's all fresh again. Next is that I'll have any painting work done. And by the way, when I say a deep clean, that includes the carpets as well, which will cost you about 100, just to get them in to do a deep clean on the carpets. But they'll bring a carpet machine in, they'll clean those carpets, because carpets get really dirty, even in just say a year of having tenants in there, they'll get really dirty. And having them clean, say every year or every 2 years, will actually save you from needing to buy more carpets, new carpets all the time. So it's actually a good cost saving method. But make sure you do the carpet cleaning after you've done the painting, because I've seen this so many times where I've had the painters come in, they'll put a clean lick of paint over the property and they spill paint onto the carpet. It happens a lot, it's not a big deal. Even if they put the covers down, they still spill paint onto the carpet. So just be prepared for it, don't get upset about it. Get the carpet cleaners in after and they'll just clean it and they'll get all that paint out as well, or anything else that's been in there, like stains, from animal stains to red wine and chocolate and all sorts of things. It doesn't matter how good your tenants, everyone spills stuff on their carpet, so that's something to look out for. You've also got to make sure that your decor and your style of the property is up to date, because fashions are changing so quickly at the moment, and if your property isn't clean and fresh, then you're going to get left behind. So sometimes landlords will bring me properties and they're 1960s, 1970s style of wallpaper and things like that with patterns and old-fashioned. Those properties are very difficult to rent. So either even if I own them with all my strong marketing and sales background, even I would struggle to rent those properties, because you're already starting at the bottom of the hill and you've got to climb the hill with this old-fashioned property. So it's a lot easier just to get someone in, give it a clean lick of paint, and then you'll rent it much, much easier. The second point then is your photography. Again, a lot of people, they'll just take out their phone and they'll just take a quick photo without even thinking about, is the room or the house dressed really nicely? Is it dressed beautifully? Would I live there if I looked at that photograph? In most cases, the answer is no, you wouldn't. And that happens a lot. When I see these photos, I think, thank you if you're my competitors, because now I can quite easily destroy you in the marketplace, in the business world, because there's no competition. When you're not looking at, say, lighting and making sure it's well furnished, there isn't really any competition for me at all. So you want to make sure that you've got lots of natural light, i.e. not taking photos late at night or early in the morning when it's dark. Make sure you get in the most natural light for that room, and it's well dressed, it's well furnished, it's looking nice. Even use light boxes if you can. You know, you can get these little small cheap light boxes now. They're only about £20 from Amazon. Use those to light up the room if you need to. I mean, £20, these boxes will last you for years to come, so you can use them for the future. But most of the photographs anyway will last you for a long, long time. And yes, you do really need a professional camera to do really good quality photos, but it's not necessary. I mean, worst case scenario, use a high quality digital phone like an iPhone or similar, you know, because that has a very good camera on it. But ideally you want to use a DSLR camera, and if you haven't got one, someone in your family or friend circle will probably have one. Ask if you can borrow it for a few hours, you know, offer to buy them lunch or offer to buy them dinner or something in return. Borrow that camera, make sure that the SD card is with it. Take those photographs, download those photos, and give the camera back as quickly as you can, really. You don't want to, you know, borrow it for too long, because then people might not want to lend to you again in the future. So get your photos, get them edited if you need to, but most of the time you won't even need any editing skills, because as long as you've got good light and you've used the DSLR camera, you'll have really good photos. So this is really the second point that you need, which will blow away your competition. And point number 3, what we were just talking about, this transitions very nicely, because now we're going to talk about competition. So you want to research your competition. You want to do this every time that your property comes back up for renewal, whether that's 6 months, whether that's a year, it doesn't really matter, even if it's 5 years. You want to research the marketplace. What's happened in the marketplace? Have rents gone up? Have rents gone down? Has the standard gone up? What's happened in the area to houses that you're competing with, or rooms? Like me, I specialize in room rentals. So I'm always looking every 3 months at the market. Do we have an oversupply? Do we have an undersupply? Have prices gone up? Have they gone down? What are people looking for? What sort of tenants are coming in and asking for room viewings? Have there been more jobs created? Have any companies left the marketplace? These are all the things that you've got to consider so that you're competitive against your competitors. Point number 4 is, of course, advertising. So it used to be that you could just get a piece of paper, put it up in your window, house for rent, room for rent, and people would knock on your door and they'd come and rent your room. Yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. You know, I've spoken to landlords who have come to me and said, I've done the same thing over and over for years. I put a sign in my window. I'd always have tenants. Now I don't get any tenants. Well, that's very old school. Tenants aren't doing that anymore. I mean, what they're doing is they're using platforms like Rightmove if they're looking for a house, Zoopla as well. They're the 2 main sites in the UK. In the US, it's sites like Zillow, etc. But in the UK specifically, that is what people are going to be on. They're going to be on Rightmove, they're going to be on Zoopla. The next platform is spareroom.co.uk. Spare Room is more for professionals, not students, although students sometimes go on there. But that's more for professionals who are looking for a room in a shared house, or possibly a studio, maybe a very small apartment, like a studio apartment. They'll also be on Spare Room. So that's spareroom.co.uk. That's a site that I use. I highly recommend it. Very good site, and you'll get tenants quite easily through there. But apart from that, you don't really want to be advertising anywhere else. Most tenants are now digital. They're looking online. So what I always do is I don't just look at it from my own point of view when I'm doing anything. I always look at it from the customer's point of view. So if I was a customer, what would I be doing? Well, the first thing I'd do is I'd type into Google, room for rent in London or something like that. So what is the first thing that comes up when you type that in? It's probably going to be Rightmove or Spare Room or something like that. So you want to be advertising where your customers are. Your fifth point then is the actual viewings themselves. But again, most people start here. I'm going to take you back to here. So once you've done your adverts and you've done all of the work that we talked about before, you're then going to get messages coming through. Now, this is the mistake that most people make. They get the message and they say, yes, someone's interested. Yes, when do you want to view? Here's the address, here's all my details, when can you come? That's the wrong way to do it. You don't want to be doing it like that. What you want to be doing is you want to have a pre-screening schedule, like a checklist as it were. So just to give you an example, as soon as someone contacts me and they say, yes, I'd like to book a viewing on your property or your room or whatever it is, the first thing I'm going to do is send them back a list of a few questions. So there might be 3 to 5 questions in there, depending on if they want a house or a room. So I want to know, who's it for? You know, is it for you? Who's going to be living there? Are you in full-time employment? Or if it's a student, are you in full-time education? I want to know, can you afford the room or the house? That's the other question. And how long you need it for. So just to give you an example, there's a few questions that I'll be asking. Because a lot of time what will happen is someone will turn up and they won't be able to afford the room or the house, or they'll be the wrong type of tenant in the first place. So you've really got to make sure that they're right from the get-go. Now, a lot of people, and then let's bring it on to point number 6 because we'll loop these together. A lot of people focus just on the referencing process. They will speak to someone over the phone, they'll do a viewing, etc. And they'll get them straight into referencing. So that is a reference check or a credit check, things like that. So this is what most people will do. I personally, although I do those checks, I have a step here before I go into this step here. And this step here is really me trusting my gut instinct on those people. Nothing that you get back from that referencing or credit check will ever beat your gut instinct on that person. And this is proven hundreds and hundreds of times in my life where I've thought to myself, there's something not quite right about this person, but I've rented to them anyway because I had an empty room or an empty house. And then later on, I've come to regret it because there has been something not right about them. An example was one guy who came for a room viewing and there was just something off about him. I didn't know what it was. You know, he passed all the referencing and credit checks afterwards. Everything was fine, but my gut instinct said there was something not quite right about this guy. But I went against my gut instinct. I rented to him. Well, how can I put this? It found out later on that he was actually a criminal on the run from the police. But yet he passed all of his checks. You know, how does that happen? So you've just got to be really careful. Trust your gut instinct. I mean, I could tell you lots of horror stories that I've had over the past. Cannabis farm, someone paying 6 months up front as well. Referencing and credit checks doesn't always show these things. So I think it's most important to trust your gut. And if all else fails, the last thing that I always get in almost all cases is a guarantor. So I want a guarantor for that tenant no matter what. Some people don't like giving it, and the people who don't like giving it are usually because they think you don't trust them. Well, it's not really about trust, it's about protecting your asset. So you've got to protect your asset because it's your money at the end of the day. If they don't pay you and they owe you a couple of months of rent, you're going to lose a lot of money. So I always get a guarantor, and I've got a very simple template. It's just a very simple Word document just saying that this person will pay if your tenant doesn't pay their rent or if they abscond or damage the property. So guarantor is very important. So if you follow all of these 6 points, I promise you will be able to find the best tenant. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. You also want to click the link in the top of the description, which is going to take you to the propertycashflowacademy.com. You're also going to want to follow me on my social channels so you're kept up to date. Apart from that, I'll see you on the next video.